Cully the mountain engine woke up from a nightmare. It was about 7, nearly 8 o'clock in the morning. Most of the other engines weren't there, because, well, they were asleep. Another nightmare, was it? Cully jumped and looked over to see Wilfred sitting next to him. Yeah, it was, said Cully. You dreamt of Godred again, didn't you? Said Wilfred. Cully was surprised. But Wilfred could always read engines and people like a book, and Cully was no exception. He took a heavy sigh. Yeah, I did. I feel like if I did better at steering him in the right direction, then he'd still be here. Wilfred was shocked, but then quickly grew stern. So you feel like you failed him? Well, yes, said Cully. He was almost afraid to say that sentence. Wilfred seemed almost angry at him. Because he was. Cully, he began, you did not fail anyone. Godred was a terrible, and I mean terrible, influence on this railway. And I am not one to speak ill of the dead. But it's true. You could see it too. And that's why you felt the need to take the railway into your own frames. Cully sighed. Wilfred never missed a thing. Well, yeah, that is true. I mean, I got here and I saw what Godred was like and how he treated you and Wilfred, or you and Ernest, and it didn't feel right. And I don't know, I was so young at the time, I felt like I had to fix things, you know? And I couldn't. I remember seeing Godred tumble off the mountain that day. It was awful. And I kind of feel like it was my fault. Cully, listen to me, said Wilfred, sounding even angrier than before. But for some weird reason, Cully felt not as scared. Godred never kept a good lookout. You've always said it yourself. We all knew it. The accident wasn't entirely his fault. The rails were damaged. But we don't go fast on them mountains. We had plenty of time to react. And so did he. If only he had looked. But he didn't. And that was something you warned him about several times. So it's not your fault, Cully. Godred was his own demise. And truth be told, I think of him sometimes and I wish that he got a second chance, but he didn't. He tempted fate and he lost. That was his decision, Cully, not yours. So please, don't blame yourself. It's not your fault. And besides, Wilfred continued, smiling a little, if you think you failed this railway, then, well, you didn't. Cully looked. What do you mean? Well, said Wilfred, you know what I was like when Godred first ruled the railway. I was unbearable. But you've shown me that I could be myself. That it was okay to be afraid of heights, and that, well, you helped me find out that whistling was what calmed me down. And honestly, I feel like without it, my life here would have been hell. Without you, all of our lives would have been hell. But it's not. You saved Patrick. He could have ended up exactly like Godred, if not for you. And, I mean, how are we supposed to look out for the younger engines if we didn't grow up? But we did, and we grew up to be great. That's why we have you here, Cully. I wouldn't be able to give Alaric the advice I give him if you didn't give me advice when I was his age. And I'm sure Ernest feels the same about Eric. And I know you feel the same about Patrick. So, listen, Coldy. You didn't fail anyone. You never have. You never will. This is why it's called the Coldy Fell Railway. Because without you, the whole thing would fall apart. Coldy was gobsmacked. He didn't know what to say. Thank you, Wilfred. That was very wise. And I wouldn't have been this wise if it weren't for you, old friend. Brother, I mean. So many of us, I sometimes forget that we're all related in some way. Coldy chuckled. Just then, Wilfred's driver leaned out of the cab. I'm sorry to interrupt your conversation, but we really need to get going, Wilfred. Oh, of course. I'm sorry, Coldy, but I really must be off now. But just remember what I said, yeah? And with a toot of his whistle, he puffed out of the shed. Coldy stood amazed. Wow, he really has grown up to be a great engine, he said. He still couldn't believe that Wilfred was claiming he was partially responsible for that. A few minutes later, Wilfred passed by the sheds again with a coach, whistling like these birds right here. Coldy smiled, and then slowly closed his eyes before going to sleep. What you think of that, Dustin?
That fucking sucked.